Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to our channel and thanks for logging on. If you like these videos, do me a favor and subscribe to our YouTube channel right here at Watchbox Reviews. I'd really appreciate it, and then I could send videos of watches like this to your inbox on a daily basis. If you like this watch, you can buy it on thewatchbox.com. Buy, trade, and sell luxury watches on thewatchbox.com. Today, we're discussing the most modern iteration of the standard issue Audemars Piguet Royal Oak automatic. 41 millimeters bigger, burlier, and more robustly powered than the standard 15202 Jumbo. This is the one for everyday use, the 15400 of 2012 to present. And it is bigger, it is bolder, it's 41 millimeters on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, the old maxim that every Royal Oak wears larger than its rated size obtains. So this is a 41, but I've always felt it wears more like a mini offshore. 42 or 43 is the idea you need to have in your head. It's not a thick watch, not at all. 9.9 millimeters thick with a generously sloped octagonal bezel. It will slide underneath the dress cuff, but it stretches its wings across the wrist, as this is where it creates its wrist real estate. 51.6 millimeters if you measure lug to lug. If you measure the outermost rigid points, because this bracelet cannot pull straight down, you wind up with a span, a rigid span of a very substantial 54.4 millimeters. So I would say you probably want to wear this watch on a wrist no smaller than 14.5, 15 centimeters in circumference. You see how it sits on 16 centimeters. You can size down a bit, but keep in mind, no matter your wrist size, it'll sit better on an oval wrist than a round wrist. Now, the thing about the 15400 versus the 15202 is that it's just beefier. It looks and feels like it's halfway between a jumbo and an offshore. The bracelet is broad, robustly constructed, but still finely finished. No compromise here. When you buy a Royal Oak, offshore or standard, you're paying for hand-finished metal. And most of the value of the watch, ironically, comes from the perfection that is achieved using bevels, using satin, using tapers of a bracelet that you can see, but you can't feel as it tapers. That's how tight the tolerances are between the links. You can't feel the step down of that curve. You can see it. You can also see that the bevel aligns perfectly from the case band where the bevel starts down the bracelet all the way along the shoulders. The flanks of the bracelet feature vertical satin. The transitional surfaces are the polished bevel. The top features longitudinal satin across each link, but note, the end of each of the intermediate links, the plots, each one has a polished end that glints and gleams as you turn that bracelet through the camera and through the light. You'll also note the channeling between them has been individually finished. Every surface of each of these links finished one by one, entirely by hand. On the underside, plenty of big gaps. You can see there's a channeling between the links to avoid pinching skin or pulling hair. Thoughtfully designed, it also aerates robustly on a hot day, as you'll see the daylight showing through from my baseboard. You'll also note, unlike the Patek Philippe Nautilus, sizing screws used for removable links. A robust contemporary AP double fold deployant clasp, curved to shape itself to arc around the underside of your wrist. You can see a combination of satin finish and blasted finish when you close it, and it is sequential. You have the AP logo marking the partition point and twin triggers such that you cannot accidentally pop this open. It's not friction fit and there's no cheap clamshell. Triggers is how it should be done in all instances. Likewise, the use of screws to fix the bracelet to the case rather than spring bars. I appreciate this on the Royal Oaks and offshores. The rest of the industry needs to take its cue from AP here. Screws and fixed bars rather than spring bars for expensive watches. The case is as handsomely finished as the bracelet. You can see that there's a perfect alignment of the crease of the bezel flanks that continues through the mid case and into the case back. The satin finish on the flank is immaculate. Likewise, on the hoods of the lugs, the bevel is not just laid down by hand, but it's perfectly matched in width as well as taper on both sides, this done by feel and by eye. The polished surfacing offering both contrast and a visual transition. The top of the bezel, satin finished, contrasts with the polished and rounded edges, and the top is squared off, sharp, and flat. The bezel bolts themselves are white gold on the Royal Oak. They are steel on the offshore, and you can see that they are all recessed below the plane of the bezel. That is how it should be on a Royal Oak and an offshore. Once they're flush with the bezel, that's AP's internal cue for replacement of the bezel. No such problem here. All of the bolts, and they are bolts, not screws, are hexagonal, countersunk by screws that thread in on the other side, and they're all high polish. You'll also note that they're aligned perfectly so that they circle the bezel. Now the inner wall of the bezel is of high polish, and the dial base is a tapisserie pattern that is cut on a pantograph previously done by Stern Frere, a Richemont company descended from an old Stern family concern. The dials are now made in-house by Audemars Piguet on a pantograph, as ever, a pantograph being a machine that essentially takes a giant model of whatever it's trying to engrave, and then it translates line for line that giant model into a miniature. It's a 19th century engine, AP owns its own. That's how you create this hobnail pattern. And I should mention that there is a lot more to the dial than the large blocks of the hobnail. When you inspect these at close range, they have a wonderful pebbly granular texture that runs between the hobnail flares and channels. Absolutely gorgeous and interesting on the micro level. All hands, the AP logo, as well as the indices, are of white gold. It is loomed, there will be a loom shot, and there's a thoughtful step to the date window, so it's not simply a drop from the plane of the dial down to the date disc, which for the 15400 generation is monotone to match the color of the dial. Now, the crown. Unlike the 15202, this is a screw-down crown. Even though the water resistance rating is the same on both, I would endorse this watch when freshly water tested for servicing because of the screw-down crown structure. I would not swim with the jumbo. You'll note hacking seconds. The watch also features a quick set date function. And the timepiece is powered by Audemars Piguet's in-house and rather handsome caliber 3120. Let's get it in focus and discuss in depth. Now, caliber 3120 was phased in during the middle of the last decade, came on board the Royal Oak family with the 15300 and its standard issue on the 15400. Automatic winding via bidirectional action, so no rotor wobble or excessive noise. Ceramic rotor bearings for higher efficiency. It features a engraved mass with the coats of arms of the Audemars and Piguet family, as Audemars Piguet remains family-owned to this day since 1875, and the balance is both braced on a full balance bridge anchored on both sides by this rather batwing-shaped bridge, and it's free-sprung with a Gyromax-style balance, much like a Patek Philippe, the combination of the two allowing the watch to be robustly regulated to exceptional precision and then hold that precise regulation in the face of shocks and bumps. This is the same base caliber found in the offshore. 40 joules, 60-hour power reserve. It has the hacking and the quickset features we discussed. And it is simply beautiful in its execution. Linear Côte de Genève across the bridges, black polished screw heads, and a tight and even perlage across the base plate. Handsome and entirely AP. I also appreciate that the movement's not excessively thin. It has the toughness and the thickness of a sports watch caliber baked right in. You can see and you can purchase this Audemars Piguet Royal Oak 15400 on our website. And we're back with the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Automatic 15400ST in stainless steel. As you can see, this is a full-service sports watch with a fully luminescent dial. You can see this one by the light of day beaten away at 21,600 vibrations per hour on our website.